Welcome to Please Me, the podcast bringing you bold conversations and big clit energy. I'm Eve, your host, on a journey from trauma to sexual liberation. Join me and my guests as we dive into conversations around orgasm equality, self-love, body positivity, and essential sexual education. Let's reclaim pleasure and close the orgasm gap one empowering conversation at a time. Last week, I interviewed Victoria Mondlock, a retired OBGYN who helps women with hormone balance. This episode is full of empowering insights, and I encourage you to go back and listen and learn with me. You can find my archived episodes on Patreon. I'm excited to share that I am still in the Fab Over 40 competition and have made it to the quarterfinals. Please follow the link in the show notes to vote for me daily. It's free. If you can, a $5 donation will not only support me, but also help raise funds for the National Breast Cancer Foundation, a great cause. Please Me is for mature audiences. Sit back, relax, and surrender to the pleasure of Please Me.
So my orgasms started to change. They started becoming more full body. And I think some of that is just because I had done something to affirm who I am. Just starting hormone therapy, I think, is a huge aspect. Medical transition, a medical gender transition. There's a bigger part that I think is just accepting who you are, which is difficult.
Hello, and welcome to Please Me, the podcast that aims to destigmatize conversations about sex and sexual health by turning the sheets into our classroom. I'm so excited today to welcome Amethysta Herrick to the show. And she is such an interesting woman. She is a transgender woman who had gender-affirming sex this past summer. And she's been enjoying the changes in her body, which I cannot wait to get into with her. She also has a podcast. It's called Gender Identity Weekly. And I want to make sure that I got that right. Is that right, Amethysta? Okay.
Yep.
And it's such an amazing show to support people that are going through this process, just like she did. So again, welcome to the show, Amethysta. Thank you so much for being here today.
Thank you so much for inviting me, Eve. It really means a lot to me. This will be a great conversation, I think.
I do too. And I just find it fascinating that you've had some changes in your body since you became a woman, and you report that your orgasms have improved. And I think that that is so fascinating because after undergoing surgery, I would think that there may be a decrease in sensation, but maybe the way that things are positioned now are making things even more amazing. So first of all, can you just get into the way that you were, or not the way, but how you were feeling with orgasms as a man, as opposed to how you're feeling with orgasms as a woman?
Sure. I don't know if this is going to be nitpicky, but I want to, because like when you're transgender, that doesn't generally, there's a distinction between being transgender and having transitioned gender. So like I identified as a feminine my whole life, probably since I was single digit age, 4 or 5 years old. I have identified like that. So the way I think of it, and this is, again, maybe it's just nitpicky, but I think of it as when I presented as a man to now when I present as a woman. So it's distinction between how I identified and how I present. So this is my little point there. But when I started, so your question was, what was it like before and after? When I presented as a man, so I never liked those parts for what it's worth, because when you get excited, and maybe men love this, I didn't, but when I got excited, it was uncomfortable. It was like something stuck in some boxer shorts or some pants or something like that. And it would be stiff and pushing around. You can't really walk when it's like that. And then there's like this stickiness that I didn't like either. And maybe I understand that was my biology, but I was ew. So what's interesting is once I started hormone replacement therapy, which was in July of 2022, first of all, I experienced very big cognitive changes. Like all of a sudden I could feel emotions and I felt physical pain, which was interesting. I had a strange relationship with pain before that. But then within maybe a couple of months, my orgasms started to change. They started to become more full body. And I attribute that. I know that there are biochemical aspects to hormone therapy, obviously. Your biochemistry shifts dramatically. Biochemistry and body development shifts dramatically depending upon the hormonal balance. So if you have more testosterone, you do certain things. If you have more estrogen, you do different things. And I started developing breast buds very early on, like a couple of weeks in, which is apparently atypical. Usually it takes 6 to 9 months, I'm told. So I started forming breasts, and probably within a couple of months, those were much more sensitive. I actually had protrusions that were sensitive, and I liked it. And I didn't like it before. I hated anybody touching my nipples before. So in any event, my orgasm started to change. They started becoming more full body. And I think some of that is just because I had done something to affirm who I am. Just starting hormone therapy, I think, is a huge aspect. Medical transition, a medical gender transition. There's a bigger part that I think is just accepting who you are, which is difficult. And I think that part of why I didn't like sexism presenting as a man is because I didn't accept that part of me. I didn't accept myself as such. And so it was not, it seemed like it was like an explosion. And then I was like, okay, I'm all done. And there was always a sense of shame, which I found interesting, always a sense of shame when I finished. So now that I got gender affirming surgery, which I did in July of 2024, they told me don't have sex for 4 months. Okay. I couldn't wait.
That's a long time. I don't know if I could wait either.
Oh my gosh.
That would be hard.
I waited 6 weeks. I think I got 6 weeks in.
Good job. Good job.
But the sensation is so different. So it's gone from this body-centric explosion in one part, and then I've got to turn over and fall asleep, to more of a whole body experience. And then once I got the surgery, and it's been developing over the past 4 months now, because it's actually 4 months today that I got surgery.
You can officially have sex now.
Well, trust me, I've had a lot of orgasms. Let's just say that.
Good.
But it's gone from this body-centric explosion and done to more of this celebration and a full body. And now I think of it as like a full soul celebration where it isn't just, okay, great, I had sex, but it's, okay, great, I had sex. And it's an affirmation of who I am, a confirmation of who I am, a celebration. It was a life-altering change to get that surgery, and I never would have expected that. And whereas sex before was a little bit uncomfortable because I didn't like the parts, it's like I got all the good bits of an orgasm now with nothing that makes me uncomfortable. And no shame. That's another very big change that I experienced. Everything is very clean feeling, very real feeling, and very natural feeling. And it's so good. So good. I feel like I'm going to continue going on that.
That's okay. No, this is what this show is about, is really talking to people, real people, about their experiences, and this is very real. And you're being so honest with me, and I totally appreciate that. And many people are going through the same thing and don't have anyone to talk to about it. So this is so important for people to hear about, even if they're just considering it. When you explain it in that way, I can understand why before, with the shame imposed and not loving who you were, that would affect your sexuality 100%. And now that you are fully in your own body and loving who you've become after the surgery, now you have the right hormones that go along with it too. All of that just plays a part, and you've thrown the shame out the window, which I often tell people to do. And we talk a lot about throwing that shame out the window from family pressures and societal pressures and all of that, because it does inhibit our sexuality. And when you're able to throw that shame out the window, you can really hone in to your body and your sensations. And how amazing that your breasts, an area of your body that was like a no touch zone, right? Do not touch me, I'm not into it, suddenly becomes this beautiful erogenous zone.
Yeah, I love it now. I don't know how long I had been on hormone therapy, probably at least a year, but I've actually experienced an orgasm just from my wife touching my breasts. It was, wow, just the ability to love my body. Do you know that I hesitated a bit when that came out because I don't think I've ever said that phrase before, unless it would be I don't love my body.
The other way around, right?
Yeah, the ability to love who I am and in my body it really is, it's just life altering.
Oh my gosh, yes.
I have no other way to put that. And I know that there is a risk, because I do want to point this out. There is a risk that if you undergo vaginoplasty or phalloplasty for that matter, but if you get gender affirming surgery, there is a risk that the nerves aren't going to hook back up. It's a risk in any surgery, really. It's not just gender affirming surgeries. Whether you get like a breast augmentation, if you get a knee replacement, it doesn't make a difference. There's a chance you might have neuropathy afterwards, so you don't some numbness. It didn't happen to me, and my understanding is that with modern gender affirming surgical techniques, it's a very low incidence of neuropathy, but there is the possibility that it occurs. And I'll tell you, that was what I was most afraid of.
Of course.
I wasn't afraid of getting the surgery. It was the first surgery I had ever had at 54 years old.
Okay. Wow.
But it's been a boring life, apparently. But
no, that's amazing. You've been so healthy, because a lot of people have had multiple surgeries by that age and you would never have one. And the first one, went for was not really cosmetic. It was life-changing, really. Gender affirming surgery is really not cosmetic surgery, even though, yes, part of it is very much cosmetic. You have to make it look nice, right? But then there's all the function, and the function is what you were saying you don't want to lose. And in any surgery, that is absolutely true, that you are putting yourself at risk for developing some kind of sensitivity issues, whether that be a decrease in sensitivity or whatever that may be. I know that you told me that you had a minimal depth vaginoplasty, and I'm just curious because I didn't realize that there were maybe different depths that you can choose from. And just tell me a little bit about that, because I'm curious.
Sure. So let me start with this. The outside in any vaginoplasty is typically identical. So that part of it is actually a vulvoplasty, is what that's called. So they remove the penis, they remove the scrotum, and depending upon the technique, they'll use some of that tissue to generate labia minora. But otherwise, they'll use other parts of what's underneath there. So the peritoneum. Yeah? No.
Peritoneum, yes.
Yes, thank you. Peritoneum. Yes. Sorry, because you'll see why I was screwing that up in a second. But so that area there, they'll use some of that tissue to make labia majora. Typically what happens is they'll pull the prostate forward and gather up all of this tissue and push it up inside, right where the peritoneum is. What you can do is actually attach another piece of tissue there that makes a neovaginal canal. And there are 3 different ways that they'll do that. There are probably more, but sometimes they'll use tissue from the actual penis. So that's the penile inversion type, where you get a neovaginal canal from penile skin. Sometimes they'll take it from the bowel or the large intestine. And then sometimes they will harvest tissue from the peritoneum. So that's called a peritoneal pull-through. The only difference there is the actual tissue that creates the neovaginal canal. Otherwise, the vulvoplasty is identical. So what I did was not get a neovaginal canal. And I did that for a couple of reasons. First of all, I mentioned I'm older. Like, the chances are pretty good I'm not going out into the dating scene again and having a good time. And I'm married to a woman. And I also never really cared for penetrative sex anyway. Like, it was very difficult for us to have a child, actually, because neither my wife nor I really cared for penetrative sex. And so it was like, oh, let's have a kid. And we go, ooh, damn, that means we have to do. So, hey, but so minimal depth just means I didn't get a neovaginal canal. Oh, sorry. So the first reason was because I am in a now a lesbian relationship. The second reason is because the neovaginal canal has to go through the pelvic floor. And so they actually make an incision. Yeah, they make an incision in the pelvic floor to extend from the peritoneum. So this is interesting, from the peritoneum to the peritoneum. That's how long the vaginal canal can be. So it ends up being biology structure dependent how long of a vaginal canal you'll end up with. But generally you end up with something from 5.5 to maybe 7 inches if you're lucky, 4.5 to 6.5 inches. So that's the other reason why I didn't want to get a vaginal canal, because it's short anyway. So anyway, hopefully that answered that question. So
yes,
bunch of surgery stuff.
It's so interesting. And the options are out there for people to understand that if they want to have penetrative sex, it's a more in-depth surgery, but it can happen. And so for you, that wasn't the most important thing because you weren't into penetration anyway. And I love this example because sex is so broad. It doesn't always have to mean penetration. And what we see on TV, what we see in all the shows, what we see in all the movies is always penetrative sex. And sex is so much more than penetration. And you can enjoy sex without ever penetrating. Hello, people. 95% of women need external clitoral stimulation in order to orgasm. So if you are only focusing on the penetration, you're never going to get there. You're never going to have that orgasm that you want. So I love this example because it just shows that sex is a continuum of many things, many sensations, and it's not just about penetration.
I'll tell you, since I've been healing up, the sensations, I actually really like being touched, like labia, like around. So labia majora sort of area. I don't know. All the sensations are so different. I wish I could show a picture, but I'm not going to.
Yes, I have to say that I have seen, not yours, but I have seen another person who's gone through gender-affirming surgery. I have seen her vulva. I haven't looked in detail, but just from the outside, and it looks exactly like a regular woman's vulva. It's astonishing to me. I was like, how did they make it look so perfect?
Surgical techniques are amazing. And so we were talking earlier, I went to Thailand to get this done because, for a couple of reasons. I was scheduled for surgery in May. Sorry. And actually, I can't believe I forgot because I was scheduled for May 1st. So this is Beltane or May Day. I'm not sure who out there is pagan, but it was a big, huge celebration of phallic objects, right? You had little maidens dancing around a maypole, right? I thought this was going to be a great time to go and get all of that removed, but my insurance company decided you can't do it in May. So I went to Thailand, and I'm going to point out this is not like a plug for Thailand so much, but the healthcare was amazing. I was in that hospital for 9 nights. It was truly stunning how good of care I got. But they also have different techniques. And so the reason I brought this up at all is because in the US, sometimes it's a 2-stage. You'll do a vulvoplasty and a vaginoplasty and then a labiaplasty afterwards. So it's 2 steps. So you start off with something that doesn't look maybe as good as you like, and then sometime later it'll look better. But there are many techniques. And what I got done in Thailand is from almost day one, I looked at it and I went, wow, even with some stitches around. And now it looks phenomenal. Full disclosure, I will take my phone camera and
and check it out.
So of course,
you check yourself out.
because why not? now I love it so much. I look at it and go, how beautiful. Look at me down there, my little flower. So I feel like I had a different point I was going to make. Now I'm thinking about looking at myself with my phone, and whatever it was I was going to say went right out the window.
That's okay. Maybe it'll come back to you, but I wish that
Maybe.
all women felt that way about their
Yeah.
beautiful vulvas. Okay. We have beautiful bodies. And unfortunately, many women do not feel confident in their bodies. They feel ashamed. They feel embarrassed. They feel smelly. They feel, I don't know, they watch porn and they think it's too big because the women that are in porn are typically have smaller bodies, which means they have smaller vulvas. And then oftentimes they'll have vaginoplasties, which will shrink their labia majora. And it's like, why would you want to change your body and take away sensation? I do not believe in those surgeries whatsoever because our bodies are beautiful exactly as they are. And so I wish more women felt that way about their beautiful bodies and the amazing clitoris. The clitoris, the only organ in the female body that is meant just for pleasure. And men don't have this, right? They have a penis, which is for pleasure and for spreading their seed, right? But women
and
just
peeing,
have,
I guess, but
and peeing. It's functional, right? It's a functional thing. And the clitoris is just for pleasure. So why not really love all of the parts of your body? And I love that that you're able to really love the body that you're now in. And I congratulate you for that because it took many years for you to get to this point of being super proud and happy of who you are. So I applaud you for that. Are you in perimenopause or postmenopause and wondering about hormone replacement therapy? As a pelvic floor physical therapist, I help women to navigate this time of their lives. Did you know that 30% of our lives will be in menopause? It's important to try to strive for optimal levels of hormones in your body. What I use is parlor games. I use the Silky Peach Cream, and that's the estrogen cream. And I use the Vibrant Third, and that's the progesterone cream. And I cycle that throughout the month. You want to make sure that your levels remain optimal throughout your life so that you can enjoy vaginal health and an amazing sex life. So check out in the show notes the link to get your own today. And I applaud you for having a show that talks about this because it's so important for people that are interested in going through this, who are feeling. Let's talk about statistics, okay? Let's talk about the new generation. How do you see the new generation being different than, say, 50 years ago?
The biggest difference, so I don't remember the exact statistic. It was somewhere around half of Gen Alpha, might have even been going into Gen Z. Half of Gen Z and Alpha don't really see a binary of gender. They see gender as much more fluid. And some of this comes from when I was growing up, like David Bowie. I could look at David Bowie and go, oh, that's gender fluid. But there weren't a ton of examples. And you go out today and there's a ton of examples of gender fluidity. I also think that the effect of feminism over the past 50, longer, maybe as far as 70 years, has helped us see that there aren't necessarily like feminine jobs or masculine jobs, but feminine and masculine actions, feminine and masculine essences. And so I think what I see today anyway is like children. I don't want to say children. Everybody's a child to me at this point, right? But Gen Z, Gen Alpha, they don't want rigidity in their identity, which makes perfect sense. And actually, if I could follow up on something you were talking about before, when you say that there are women who look at their bodies and they don't feel good about them, they'll watch some pornography and go, oh, I don't match up to that. Do you know what that is? It's gender dysphoria. The transgender community doesn't have a monopoly on gender dysphoria. When we look at gender norms in our social environment and find that we don't live up to them, then we experience a sense of discomfort. For some people, that might be my vagina is too big, my vulva is too big. For some people, it's my breasts are too big, my breasts are too small. For men, they go, oh, I need bigger pecs or bigger biceps. I don't know why, because frankly, I never really cared for either. Not a point. But it's all gender dysphoria.
Mhm.
Anytime you fail to live up to a social expectation that is a gender characteristic, you experience gender dysphoria. So I wanted to say that because I think the younger generations are capable of seeing that and feeling it and not feeling bad about it, because gender is they're much more open to gender. They're much more interested in exploring it rather than just conforming to the social expectations like I grew up with. Do you want to hear a quick story about how I came out to my son?
Yes, I would love that. And I think it's so interesting because you're right, because the younger generation just has a completely different relationship with gender. And I
Yeah.
see that in my middle schoolers. And it's so interesting to me. And I think it's a beautiful thing
Yeah.
that they're not so rigid. We don't have to be rigid. There's a continuum. So, yes, please tell me your story.
All right. So I told you, I put on my first estrogen patch July 7th of 2022. So it's been
Okay.
just a little more than 2 years now since I did that. So my son was on summer vacation. Yeah, by the time I would have started. At one point, my wife left. It was on a Thursday. And so I was putting patches on Mondays and Thursdays. Oh, no, it must have been a Monday. It's really not that important. But I was going to put a patch on. And for some reason, I left the bedroom door open. My son comes walking in and goes, hey, what you doing? And it would have been August. So I'd only been doing this maybe 2 months, 2.5 months, maybe 6 months, or 6 weeks, excuse me, maybe as much as 6 weeks. Comes in and says, what are you doing? And I went, oh, because I'm thinking this is going to be a difficult conversation. And I said, well, sit down. I said, how mom is? And my son goes, oh, yeah, sure, a girl? And I said, yeah, so I'm going to try to become like that. And so my son looks down and goes, I am really happy you found what's going to make you happy. That was it.
That's just literally, I just got goosebumps in my head. I don't know what's goes in my head. That's incredible. And
right.
This is exactly what I'm talking about. They just have such a different perspective on gender and what makes you happy. That was the most important thing for
because I talked to my psychologist, because I struggled with this. I struggled with, do I transition or do I not, for probably 5 months. I'd known that I was going to since I was probably 12, early 1980s. I looked into the process in 2001 and it was difficult. It's easier now, thankfully. But even when my wife was telling me, listen, go do this, I really struggled with it because I thought, and had been my mantra since I found out we were having a son instead of a daughter, boys need fathers and fathers are men. Fathers are not the feminine entity I saw myself as. So I had to bury all of that very deeply. And I think that's part of why I ended up, although I was healing in many other ways, that was the one aspect I could not. I had a little bit of resentment toward him because if I had a daughter, maybe I could have expressed some of my femininity through her. I don't know. But so I was telling my psychologist, I said, I can't do this. Boys need fathers and fathers are men. And my psychologist said, no, the best gift you can give your children is authenticity.
Yes.
So they realize they're supposed to be authentic as well. And I said, you're completely wrong, and ignored it for about another 6 weeks. And then amazingly, what happens, my son's glad for me. I have such a different relationship with him now. Like we're actually a real family now. And I couldn't tap into some of these emotions. I couldn't tap into who I was. And now I can. Now I can.
When you are living your true authentic self, and this for you was becoming a woman and presenting as a woman, right? This is who you were authentically from a very early age, and you knew that about yourself. And then you inhibited that because you found out you were having a son and you wanted to be a father figure to him. And so you tamped down all of those emotions and all of those things that you wanted for yourself. And good for you that you finally went for it. I think
Yeah.
that is incredible, and that he supports you in that. And I'm curious to just ask you one more question about that before we wrap up here. As you mentioned too, like emotionally, that you really were numb before the surgery, right? And before the hormones and all of that, and how adding the hormones and having the surgery has also helped you connect with your own emotionality. Can you just get into that a little bit?
Sure. I would say that for the first 52 years of my life, I really was not, what I was able to feel was anger. And I think that was about it. I didn't really understand joy. I didn't understand love. I didn't understand what it meant to be alive. And I understand that I can look back now and go, yeah, it was just before I started transition. I was a fat, crabby old man hoping to die as soon as possible. And now here I am, much brighter colored, got purple hair. Now I think of myself as a very vibrant woman who has just thrown herself into life because I couldn't experience anything. And I believe the main reason for that, if I wanted to get philosophical or psychological, I think the main reason for that is because I just couldn't engage with any social expectations. It was, I could put blinders on and I could be a white man in technology. But if I tried to go outside that, it hurt. And so it was too hard to engage with that. Now I have the ability to look at everything that I like. Fairies. I always loved fairies. Now I have like little fairy things all over my house. It's the difference between, this is one of the cliches that you'll hear from 3 out of 4 transgender people, but it's like the difference from looking at Dorothy in Kansas when it's black and white and a tornado comes and then suddenly she wakes up and she's in Oz and everything's in color and she's looking around going, wow, who would have thought? That's the difference. It has been so huge. And was it all biochemical? No, I don't think so. I think much of it allowing myself to love everything that I know I love. And unfortunately, that also included my family. My relationship with my wife at this point is so much better. My relationship with my son, so much better. In fact, actually, just to vindicate the psychologist, I think I am a much more effective parent now than I was before. And yeah.
If you're feeling depressed, if you don't love who you are, if you say that you want your life to end, okay, you're thinking suicidal thoughts, right? How the heck are you going to be a good parent? It's literally impossible. You have to have emotional stability. And really, this gender affirming surgery and the transition that you made has helped you to get that for yourself. And it's so huge. It's such a huge thing. And I'm so happy that you will not live another 52 years. Hopefully we'll all make it to 104, right? Without having to feel those feelings of depression, of sadness, of hatred towards yourself, and of suicide. Now you are loving life. On that note, I am so thrilled to have had you on the show today. Thank you for being here, Amethysta. I just want to make sure that my listeners can find you.
Sure.
Can you just let all of the listeners know where we can find you, Amethysta?
Sure. Okay. The best place to find me. So the first place you can find me is at my personal website. That's amethysta.io. So it's amethysta.io. That one has all of my social media. So it's got links to all my social media pages. Perfect. So, if you want to follow me on any of the things, all of the places. Believe it or not, I'm not on Twitter.
That's okay. I'm not either, actually.
My professional website is gender-identity-today.com. And that one has all of my podcasts, all of the articles that I write, which can be sciencey, philosophical, and then also oftentimes links to stuff I do on YouTube. So I'll do live streams as well. And so that's gender-identity-today.com. So the podcast is Gender Identity Weekly because I only do that once a day. But The meaning of this right here, by the way, is that our gender identity is not static. It's never been static and it will never be static because we change all the time. So it's our gender identity as we know ourselves today. So that's why that's the name of that right there. Well, that's the best way to find me. Yeah.
Perfect. I am so thrilled that you were able to come on the show today. This has been such an eye-opening conversation, I think, for so many people that are curious about the surgery for themselves and also just everybody, okay? Because we need to be much more open-minded about accepting everybody into our communities. And so thank you so much for coming on the show today and for being part of Please Me.
Of course. Thank you. I don't can we do this? Is this good? Oh, that's
Yes.
looking good.
I'm not so good at making the hearts. I need to have my kids teacher. That one I can't do. That one I cannot do.
That one's much more difficult.
That one hurts my fingers. I'm like, I don't know. I can't do that one. Anyway, this has been so much
one
fun.
For the kids. So.
Yes, exactly. But they're not allowed to watch this show. This show is for adults only. All righty. Have a great day.
Thank you. You too.
For ad-free listening, exclusive bonus episodes, Eve's library of archived webinars, and early access to new releases of Please Me, become a monthly supporter on Patreon. Simply open the Patreon app on your phone, search for Please Me, and subscribe today for premium content and more. Cheers to finding your pleasure and big clit energy.